Recap: Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 901. Chapter. The storyteller's voice rose slowly, like wind drifting through ancient mountain pines. In the bustling halls of Scarlet Heaven Academy, where young elites gathered to cultivate their strength and test their pride, the day began with a rather unusual storm brewing within the mind of a young lady. All day long, Li Weiwei's thoughts wandered in directions that would have made even seasoned cultivators sigh helplessly. But such was the nature of youth. When a young woman encountered a man who was handsome, bold, and possessed that seemed to defy both past and future, her imagination naturally took flight. And so it was for the fourth young miss of the Li clan. Ever since that humiliating defeat at the hands of Ling Han, the young man had stubbornly invaded her dreams time and again. In those strange dreamscapes, where logic surrendered to imagination, Li Weiwei would often encounter her own Prince Charming, the flawless hero of every maiden's fantasy. But just as romance began to blossom, Ling Han would appear. That maddening blockhead would step into the dream as if it were his rightful domain, brazenly interrupting the sweet affection between her and her imaginary hero. Even worse, he would act as if he intended to snatch her away for himself. And in the helpless realm of dreams, Li Weiwei could do nothing to resist. Each night she would be tormented by these ridiculous visions. Each morning she would awaken grinding her teeth with burning resentment. The fourth young miss of the Li clan, noble, proud, and accustomed to victory, had not even had the chance to properly beat Ling Han in reality. Yet within her dreams, this infuriating fellow had already bullied her countless times. It was utterly unacceptable. Yet there was another bitter truth behind it all. Her status had always been too high. As the daughter of the left minister, whenever she sparred with others, they would inevitably hold back. No one dared truly defeat her. But Ling Han had not shown the slightest mercy when they fought. He had crushed her completely and decisively. Such a defeat had etched itself deeply into her memory. Thus, when she heard that Ling Han had invited her to his residence, her lively imagination immediately sprang into action. In her mind, that foolish blockhead must surely harbor some sinister intentions. Without thinking, she blurted out her suspicion aloud. "So you're not satisfied bullying me in my dreams? Now you even want to force yourself on me?" The words echoed through the air like a thunderclap. "Weiwei!" Ji Yun'er immediately grabbed her arm in panic, hastily pulling her back before she could utter something even more shocking. Only then did Li Weiwei realize what she had said. Her eyes widened. She hurriedly covered her mouth, but the damage had already been done. Flustered and embarrassed, she shot Ling Han a fierce glare. In her mind, this was entirely his fault. If he had not appeared in her dreams causing chaos, how could she have blurted out something so outrageous? The two girls soon found seats and sat down. But their presence was like two radiant moons appearing in the sky. Immediately, people began drifting toward them, eager to strike up conversations. Some admired their beauty, others were drawn by Li Weiwei's noble identity. After all, she was the daughter of the left minister, one of the most powerful figures in the empire. That title alone was enough to attract attention wherever she went. Suddenly, a voice rang out near the doorway. "Ma Xing is here." Everyone instinctively turned their heads. A young man strode through the entrance with heavy, confident steps. His build was strong and rugged, and both arms were left bare, revealing muscles hardened like forged steel. A wild aura surrounded him. It was the kind of presence that could suffocate weaker individuals. Perhaps it was the result of living among beasts for years. The savage rhythm of the wilderness had seeped into his very bones. Yet strangely, Ma Xing looked half asleep. His eyelids drooped lazily, as though he had only just been dragged from bed. But the moment he stepped inside and spotted Ling Han, his eyes snapped open. The sleepy haze vanished instantly, replaced by sharp clarity. He stared directly at Ling Han and spoke without hesitation. "Ling Han," he said plainly, "I want to spar with you." The entire room grew attentive, but Ling Han merely nodded calmly. "All right," he replied. Then he added something that made the entire room freeze. "If you want me to fight, pay 10 true origin stones first, and if you lose, you must add another 100 afterward. I need to check the payment beforehand. I'm not interested in fighting for free." The classroom erupted in laughter. Everyone knew Ling Han had a talent for shocking people, but his obsession with earning money was truly overwhelming. Li Weiwei clutched her head helplessly. "That shameless guy," she muttered under her breath. "Fancy that I just stood up for him earlier. Now he's embarrassing me as well." Beside her, Ji Yuner merely smiled softly. Her beautiful eyes drifted toward Ling Han, filled with quiet curiosity. What kind of man was he? At that moment, Ma Xing's fierce aura abruptly faltered. He had grown up in the wilderness. True origin stones were treasures far beyond his everyday life. How could he possibly carry such wealth? For a moment, he simply stood there, stunned. Finally, he nodded decisively. "Fine," he said. "When I have that many true origin stones, we'll fight." His straightforward attitude impressed many. Compared to someone like Luo Ba, who clung stubbornly to pride, Ma Xing's directness was refreshing. Indeed, he truly embodied the spirit of someone raised in the wild, simple, honest, and decisive. Having settled the matter, Ma Xing stopped staring at Ling Han. His gaze wandered casually around the room. Then he saw Ji Yuner. His eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he walked straight over. "Beauty," he said plainly. "I like you. How about we eat some meat together later?" Silence fell. Several students nearly choked on their own breath. People had seen blunt individuals before, but someone this straightforward was truly unprecedented. Ji Yuner was already famous throughout the capital. Admirers surrounded her wherever she went. If those admirers stood in a line, they could circle the capital 3 times, but none of them had ever confessed so directly. And who courted a woman by inviting her to eat meat? Was he trying to bribe Fairy Ji with roasted meat? The sheer simplicity of it was almost adorable. Ji Yuner maintained her elegant smile. "I have something else to attend to after class," she replied gently. "If there's an opportunity in the future, I will share a meal with senior brother Ma." At that moment, Li Weiwei tilted her head mischievously. "Big Sister Yun, what plans do you have later?" she asked loudly, clearly stirring trouble. Ji Yuner immediately tapped her lightly on the head. "Have you forgotten?" she said, rolling her eyes. "I'm accompanying you later so you won't fall into someone's trap." "Oh," Li Weiwei nodded quickly. Then she grabbed Ji Yuner's arm. Right, you must protect me. If the 2 of us go together, that blockhead definitely won't dare do anything reckless." Nearby students exchanged helpless looks. Meanwhile, Ma Xing scratched his head awkwardly. After being gently rejected, he simply shrugged and sat down at a nearby desk. Within moments, he sprawled across the table and fell asleep. His snores thundered through the classroom like rolling thunder. Clearly, he truly hadn't fully woken up earlier. Li Weiwei leaned close to Ji Yuner's ear and whispered conspiratorially. "Big Sister Yun, you absolutely must not like this guy. He snores like a pig. If you marry him, you'd suffer every single day." Ji Yuner rolled her eyes again. Her best friend was wonderful in many ways, but her imagination could sometimes be so excessive that one didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Gradually, the classroom filled as the start of class approached. When Lin Yu entered, many students immediately gathered around him. His popularity was truly impressive. Even Li Weiwei, the daughter of the left minister, could not quite match the admiration he received. Then, da! The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Each step carried a strange rhythm, light yet mesmerizing. Before anyone even saw the person approaching, a strange thought appeared in everyone's mind. Only an extraordinary beauty could walk with such captivating grace. The classroom gradually fell silent. By the time those footsteps reached the doorway, the entire hall had become deathly quiet. And then she appeared. A woman stepped into the doorway. Her figure was tall and slender, every curve perfectly balanced. Yet that perfection was almost overwhelming. Her chest was full and proud, her waist slender like a willow branch, her hips rounded and firm. Any man who looked at her felt his breathing grow unsteady. Her long black hair cascaded across her shoulders like flowing silk. Sunlight streamed through the strands, creating a hazy glow around her. But when everyone's gaze reached her face, the room seemed to lose its air. How could such beauty exist in this world? Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner were already considered unparalleled beauties. Yet beside this woman, they seemed to pale slightly. It was not simply a matter of physical appearance. It was her presence, her bearing. With a single glance, she intoxicated the hearts of all who looked upon her. In the immortal realm, beauty was not rare. lifespans were long, and the population vast. Where a small world might produce a legendary beauty once in a million years, here several could appear in a single city. When beauty reached its absolute peak, the true distinction lay elsewhere. It lay in presence, in status, in power. For example, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, she was known as the greatest beauty beneath the heavens. 2 emperors of mighty empires had been willing to surrender their kingdoms to her. Of course, her beauty was beyond doubt. But there was another reason. Her strength. She had perfected the heavenly body tier. Such power and authority ignited an irresistible desire in men to conquer her. That overwhelming presence enhanced her beauty even further. Rumor said that the Empress herself was extraordinarily graceful and dignified. Even when the left minister and other officials reported state matters to her, they dared not look directly at her face for too long. They feared that a single improper glance could bring death upon them. Ling Han himself had never met that legendary empress. Yet as he gazed at the woman standing in the classroom doorway, even he had to admit something. This beauty was breathtaking. In fact, her charm had already surpassed Zhu Xuan, and even the heavenly phoenix Divine Maiden. The classroom of the Northern Institution had never felt so tense, nor so alive. A strange rhythm echoed through the hall, dozens of hearts beating wildly like war drums rolling across a battlefield. The moment the woman stepped through the doorway, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Even Ling Han, whose mind had weathered countless storms of cultivation and battle, felt his thoughts waver slightly. For an instant, his normally steady spirit wobbled, as if stirred by an invisible current. If even he was affected, the other students, many far less composed, were already completely captivated. The woman advanced gracefully into the classroom. Her steps were calm and measured, each movement elegant yet unhurried. However, rather than finding a seat among them, she walked straight toward the front and stopped upon the raised platform where lecturers usually stood. Only then did she speak. "My name is Shui Yanyu," she said, her voice gentle yet clear enough to reach every corner of the room. "From today onward, I will be your lecturer." The silence lasted no longer than a heartbeat. Then the classroom erupted. "Wah!" Cheers and excited cries burst forth like a wave crashing against a cliff. Students nearly jumped from their seats in excitement. The hall that had been so tense moments ago was suddenly overflowing with energy. How could they remain calm? Standing before them was a woman of breathtaking beauty. Her appearance alone could cause hearts to tremble. Yet now she carried another identity as well. She was their teacher. That single detail made the situation far more dangerous for their peace of mind. A forbidden sweetness filled the air. The thought that this incomparably beautiful woman would now stand before them every day, guiding them in cultivation, that she was close enough to hear their voices, see their expressions, it made their hearts race uncontrollably. Someone suddenly gasped. "Wait, it's actually Shu Yanyu." Another voice quickly followed. "She entered the Northern Institution about 20 years ago, didn't she?" "Yes. Back then, she and Zhou Menghuai were famous across the empire. They were known together as the twin pearls of the empire. And their fame was even greater than the 3 beauties of the imperial capital today." More murmurs rippled through the hall as memories and rumors resurfaced. "But who could have imagined this?" someone muttered in disbelief. "Only 20 years have passed, and she has already stepped into the mountain river tier." A wave of quiet astonishment spread through the students. Within the immortal realm, the shattering void tier was considered only the lowest threshold. True elites rarely paid it much attention. Because of that, classes discussing this realm were usually led by those who had just broken through into the mountain river tier. They had recently walked the same road and could share valuable experience with younger cultivators. Of course, not just anyone could stand at the front of such a class. To become a lecturer here, one had to demonstrate astonishing results while still in the shattering void tier. At the very least, their battle prowess had to reach 19 stars. Only such individuals were deemed worthy of guiding others. As whispers continued to swirl through the room, another topic soon surfaced. "I heard something interesting," one student said quietly. "What is it?" "I heard senior brother Zhao is currently pursuing senior sister Shui." The surrounding students leaned closer. "Senior brother Zhao? Which one?" The answer came immediately. "Zhao Lun, of course. The reaction was instantaneous. Hiss! Several people inhaled sharply. You mean that Zhao Lun? Yes, the top genius from 500 years ago. The speaker continued recounting the legend. At just 26 years old, his battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier had already reached 20 stars. He broke through into the Mountain River tier at 30. At 90 years old, he advanced into the middle stages of the Mountain River tier. And by 380 years of age, he had already entered its higher levels. The storyteller paused dramatically. That Zhao Lun. The room fell silent for a moment, then someone spoke quietly. Is there any other Zhao Lun in the Northern Institution worthy of being called Senior Brother Zhao? No one answered, because everyone knew the truth. There was only one. A long sigh escaped from several students. In that case, we can only admire Senior Sister Shui from afar. Another student quickly added a warning. Actually, you shouldn't even admire her too much. What do you mean? I heard Senior Brother Zhao is extremely close with Senior Sister Shui. If anyone stares at her for too long, he becomes displeased. The speaker chuckled nervously. My advice? Don't talk to Senior Sister Shui any more than necessary. Otherwise... He let the sentence trail off with a meaningful laugh. Hey! The meaning was obvious. Everyone understood. Another wave of sighs swept across the classroom. What cruel fate. They had been assigned a lecturer whose beauty could overturn cities and kingdoms. Yet they were not even allowed to look too much. Even speaking with her could invite disaster, because Zhao Lun possessed yet another identity. He was the only son of the great General Zhao. Among the Empire's 7 generals, General Zhao stood as a towering figure. His cultivation had reached the terrifying heavenly body tier. With such a father, and with Zhao Lun's own monstrous talent and strength, who in the entire Northern Institution would dare compete with him over a woman? The answer was simple. No one. While the others sighed in helpless resignation, Li Weiwei's reaction was entirely different. Her hands clasped tightly together in front of her chest as she gazed toward the platform. Big Sister Shui is so beautiful, she exclaimed with shining eyes. Her excitement was impossible to hide. Ji Yuner, sitting nearby, watched quietly. But within her heart, she let out a faint sigh. In truth, she felt a strange sense of kinship with Shu Yanyu. Both of them possessed beauty and talent, yet neither truly controlled their own fate. For women like them, such gifts were not always blessings. Unless they could reach a level so high that no one could dictate their future, like the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Only someone who stood at such a monstrous height could truly control their destiny. At the front of the classroom, Shu Yanyu began her lecture. I cultivated my battle prowess to 20 stars in the Shattering Void tier, she said calmly, so I can still provide you with some guidance. Her voice flowed like spring water. Listening to her speak was a kind of pleasure in itself. Then she asked the class a question. First, let us discuss something important. Her gaze swept across the students. Why should we aim for 20 stars of battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier? A student quickly raised his hand. I know. Even though he understood that this peerless beauty was already connected to someone else, he still wanted to impress her. The higher our battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier, he said confidently, the stronger we will become once we enter the immortal level. Shu Yanyu nodded approvingly. That is correct. She continued explaining. Beings who step into the immortal tiers possess extremely long lifespans. For example, once you reach the Mountain River tier, your lifespan increases to 100,000 years. Each minor breakthrough within that realm adds another 100,000 years. Her words made several students stare in amazement. But precisely because these lifespans are so long, she continued, progress through the higher realms becomes slower and slower. Even breaking through once every few thousand years is considered acceptable. She paused briefly, letting the weight of her explanation settle over the room. By comparison, we spend only about 100 years in the Shattering Void tier. That short period determines the foundation for the next 100,000 years, or even 10 million years. Her expression grew serious. Therefore, I advise all of you to remain patient. Even if you cannot reach 20 stars, you must at least strive for 18. Ling Han listened silently and nodded inwardly. Her words made perfect sense. Yet at the same time, A question surfaced in his mind. Wu Gaoyuan and Xiao Miaoyan had both reached 18 stars, but Yishuang Shuang had only possessed 15. That puzzled him. In her strongest state, Yi Shuang had been a Sun-Moon tier elite. Clearly, the force behind her must surpass the 5 great sects in strength. Yet, even those sects could nurture heirs with 18-star battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier. So, why had Yi Shuang been so much weaker? In a small world, 15 stars would be considered astonishing. But here in the immortal realm, most people in this very classroom likely possessed that level of strength. It was nothing extraordinary. Ling Han made a mental note. He would ask her about it the next time they met. At the front of the room, Shui Yanyu paused briefly before continuing. Next, she said, I will share with you some insights on how to reach the extreme limits of battle prowess. And she truly held nothing back. Step by step, she described the experiences and hardships she had endured while striving toward 20 stars of battle prowess. The more the students listened, the wider their eyes grew. From her graceful appearance alone, no one would have guessed the brutal efforts she had endured. Many of the methods she described had been incredibly dangerous. In fact, several of them had nearly taken her life. Only now did the students realize how terrifying the road to the peak truly was. Suddenly, Ling Han spoke. "Excuse me, Teacher Shui," he asked. "How can someone cultivate their pure physical strength to 20 stars within the Shattering Void tier?" The room fell completely silent. For a moment, no one reacted. Then, laughter exploded. "Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. What kind of ridiculous question is that?" Someone nearly doubled over with amusement. "How could strength alone reach 20 stars?" Another student added mockingly. "If pure strength could reach 20 stars, then what would that person's battle prowess be? 25 stars? 30 stars? A chorus of laughter filled the classroom. "Stop dreaming. That's impossible. He really proves he came from a small world. Only a bumpkin would ask such a crude question." But Shui Yanyu suddenly raised her hand. Instantly, the room fell silent again. When a beauty spoke, everyone listened. Her expression was serious. "According to research conducted by ancient sages," she said, slowly, "once our origin power cultivation reaches the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, there is only space for 4 additional stars of improvement," she continued calmly. "The same is true for the physical body. It too can only improve by 4 additional stars." The students listened carefully. "But if we calculate using that limit," she continued, "the absolute extreme of pure strength would be 17 stars. And that still falls slightly short of 20. Her gaze swept across the classroom. Then she delivered a shocking statement. "However, strength of 20 stars in the Shattering Void tier does exist." "What?" The classroom erupted in shock. Their understanding of cultivation had just been shattered. "Years ago," Shui Yanyu continued, her eyes shining with admiration, "Senior Shu Ran achieved exactly that. He reached 20 stars of pure strength within the Shattering Void tier." Her voice carried a hint of reverence. Before him, no one had done it. And after him, no one has repeated it. The brilliance in her gaze made it clear how deeply she respected that legendary figure. If Shu Ran himself were to appear in this classroom, it would likely take only a few words for him to win her heart. A student quickly raised another question. "Then how do we make up those remaining 3 stars of strength?" Shui Yanyu shook her head slightly. "That is beyond human ability," she explained. "To achieve such a miracle, one must borrow strength from the heavens themselves. For example, accomplishing some incredible feat that earns the approval of heaven and earth." At that moment, Li Weiwei suddenly remembered something. She raised her hand excitedly. "Big Sister Shui! If someone split open the sky of a small world to ascend, would that earn assistance from heaven?" Shui Yanyu considered the question carefully. "There has never been a case like that on the Joint Peace Planet," she said after a moment, "so I cannot say with certainty. However, splitting open the sky of a world is indeed an astonishing achievement." She nodded slowly. "It would not be impossible for heaven and earth to grant a rich reward." Li Weiwei nodded thoughtfully. The great Ling Empire had risen by opening the sky. Among the upper circles of their nation, that fact was no secret. But the empire itself was still too weak. To the truly powerful figures of the immortal realm, it was hardly worth mentioning. As a result, Among the younger generation here, she was the only one who knew the truth. Ling Han was an emperor who had ascended by opening the sky. Suddenly, Li Weiwei's eyes widened dramatically. If Ling Han had opened the sky itself, then his battle prowess must have reached 20 stars. And if heaven and earth had rewarded him on top of that, just how terrifying had his current battle strength become? The thought made her heart skip a beat. She stared at Ling Han as if seeing him for the first time.